Are you finally starting to see how crazy college football is compared to every other sport? Because you weren't really like a college football guy. And I got to live it when I went to West Virginia, and it was just absolute craziness. And I've always just been a college football fan, but now you are seeing firsthand just how crazy this stuff is when you have the governor of Louisiana coming out during a press conference where he's not only talking about SNAP benefits, not only talking about taxes, he's talking about the head coach position at Louisiana State University. And he's saying, hey, the AD, he's not going to be involved in these decision making. I'd rather Donald Trump handpick the next head coach before I let Scott Woodward pick the next head coach of LSU. Is this not the craziest stuff that you've seen?
Didn't he backtrack on that or no?
He essentially said he's not going to be the one to do it. He's not going to pick the head coach. So there is going to be some sort of hiring process, but he just wants it to be known that it is not going to be the current AD.
But the story here, tell me the story, Coca. Is the story here that the governor came out to talk about college football, not out of the ordinary to me, because these public universities, it's political who's on the board, and the board does have a lot of power, and the government has a lot of power. Of course, the governor is involved and wants to be involved in things that make news, in things that will attract attention, give him name recognition, give him power, perceived or otherwise. But then when it goes too far, you have to then make sure that you're out there saying, hold on, I'm definitely advocating for my constituents, and I want to make sure that I can take care of poverty. That said, go LSU. Can't you picture all that happening? All of that makes sense. But would the governor himself be involved in the firing of Kelly? Would the governor himself be involved in the hiring of a new coach? Yeah. Of course, where the governor would be informed. Remember, the governor would say to people around him, don't let me get a text alert about who the next head coach is of my university.
Yep. It's also funny that he's talking about, oh, I care about the people of Louisiana. This is their tax dollars at work. But then there's already been reports that a major donor of the program is going to be the one who's paying this buyout. So this guy is just gaslighting everybody like most politicians do.
He's full of it.
Yeah, but he did say something that you really enjoy, where his quote was, y'all reporters need to start looking at who represents these people. Woodward's agent, Kelly's agent, the Texas A&M coach's agent. He's talking about Jimbo Fisher there, who got a major buyout. They all have the same agent. This is ridiculous. Lawyers would be disbarred the way these agents act. It's time for the NCAA to put guardrails.
That is funny. It is, agents do not have the same guardrails as lawyers. There is no conflict check when an agent hires or poaches a player. When you hire a lawyer, you have to gets put into the system of the law firm, and they do something called the conflict check. Are we representing anybody already who would ever potentially, now or in the future, have a cause of action or have a conflict with this new client who we're trying to represent? That's what a conflict check is. And if there's a conflict check, you can't represent this client. Do you know what people do in lawsuits? They do it in divorces, but pretty much in any lawsuit. You can call up 10 different law firms and meet with them and say, hey, I'm looking to hire a lawyer for this reason. And once you do it, you're in that law firm system. And then if the other side calls that same law firm and says, hey, I'd like to hire you, they have to say no because of the conflict check, because they would have to say, oh, no, we had a meeting with the person on the other side. Well, did they hire you? Nope, doesn't matter. We have the meeting, so therefore you can't hire us. That's really how it works in law firms. Agents, no. If a
I'm
team
just
needs a first baseman, Coca, you could have the same agent representing the top three first basemen on the market, and the agent could be talking to you about each of the first basemen, knowing the team can only choose one of them. And as a player, you hope that your agent is representing you above and beyond all, but he's not.
I'm just so shocked that these schools continue to dish out these 8 to 10 year contracts to these coaches that all include these guaranteed buyouts. Because what we've seen, and it's sort of like the history of college football, of sports in general, is that no dynasty is going to last for that long. And when you're one of these major programs like LSU and you have these, these aspirations of being a title contender and you're not doing that, they're still giving these guys extensions. Like we just saw with Indiana. Indiana just gave Kurt Signetti like an 8-year or a 10-year guaranteed
Right at the top.
deal. You're Indiana. Like I understand that the landscape is changing, and yes, maybe they could be some sort of contender, but like history says that they're not going to be that. You have Ohio State, who has been pretty dominant, for a long time. Alabama under Nick Saban, it's sort of been the same thing, but now you're looking at this team, and you're like, what, maybe under DeBoer, maybe they could sustain what Nick Saban did, but there's not many programs out there that have had this sort of sustained success where you'd be like, yeah, let's give a coach 10 years. And we're going to keep seeing it. And I don't understand why. Like why
Do you
you're
see it with
this.
players, Coca?
Only in one sport.
Baseball. The
Baseball,
long-term deals that don't work out.
That's the same thing you don't like. It's the same thing that you don't like. So you could never be an AD at a school because you would have, no willingness to dish out these huge deals.
If I could pre-fund it, then I would. So if I could go out and the market said, for me to get the coach I want, I'm going to have to give a 10-year deal, I would do it only if I had the boosters and the donors in place to pay the maximum buyout. So if I did a 10-year deal, I would have the money not escrowed, not secreted away anywhere, but I would have a donor on the hook saying, hey, I may want to fire this guy after 1 year. So I need 9 years worth of money that you're ready to go with right now. That's the only scenario under which I would have a coach with a long-term deal if I were an AD, because it doesn't work. It just doesn't. And the fact that ADs have allowed this to happen, shame on them. They don't need to pay these amounts in these years for these coaches, but they do. They keep doing it. So if you're the coach, why not take the money?
Yeah, and this brings me to Kirby Smart, who is the head coach at Georgia. He's another guy, Georgia's always been great. They were great under Mark Richt. They never got to the level of being a champion. And now you have Kirby Smart in there, and he sort of established himself there. He's a Saban disciple, and now he's got his little dynasty going on at Georgia. And he recently spoke about Brian Kelly, and his comments on it were confusing to me because it seems pretty obvious. Where he talks about Brian Kelly being fired, and he says, it's the world we live in. At this time in the middle of the season, I think there's so much built around the playoffs. It's like everything is boom or bust, and you can't have a normal season. Well, LSU didn't pay Brian Kelly to have a normal season. Brian Kelly was making $9 million a year to have not normal seasons, or if the normal season for them is winning a national championship, then he wasn't doing that. But the same thing goes for Kirby Smart. It's like, this is what they built. This is what all these coaches wanted. They wanted a playoff. They all want to be contenders. You want to be at these, these powerhouse programs. Well, this is what happens. It's the same thing with a player. If a player isn't living up to his contract and he's not living up to his expectations, he gets benched, and then a year later he gets released. Well, these coaches, it's the same thing. It's like, if we're paying you $9 million to bring us to a national championship, to bring us to a playoff, why are these guys now surprised that they're being fired? What, they thought that they were just going to have these cushy jobs making all this money forever?
Keep going, Coca, man. I'm loving this. I was going to go use the restroom. I got to tell you, what is it that you're, are you upset that they're defining a normal season as being in the playoff, the college football playoff? I'm going to go one question at a time.
Well, it's the opposite. It's the opposite. So normal season to him. So right now LSU is 5-3. So is Kirby Smart trying to say that 5-3 is a normal season?
I'm asking you, is a normal season defined for you by being in the college football playoff if you're one of these top programs?
Yeah, 100%.
100%. Okay. Winning the championship, that can't be normal. That's not part of a normal season. Making it to the final game, that can't be part of a normal season, can it? You wouldn't define that as normal.
It's just contending for a title. If you're one of these programs, if you're Ohio State, if you're LSU, if you're Georgia, if you're Alabama, if you're supposed to be Texas, Texas who has the most expensive roster in college football, that's a school, it's the same thing where you're supposed to be contending for, a national championship every year. And Texas is the one, everybody makes the jokes. Is Texas back? Is Texas back? And under Steve Sarkisian, maybe, possibly, but they've been a huge letdown this year. Maybe they can turn things around with Arch Manning, who knows? But I just think it's ridiculous to be one of these coaches who's making $10 million a year and think that normal is supposed to be a 5-3 season, because Kirby Smart knows better than everybody else. Like, if they're going 5-3, if he has consecutive years, or if he has 3 years where they're not making the playoffs, well, guess what? He's likely to be fired too.